Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Peter Llewellyn. I run the services at MedComms so you'll find information, resources, activities, and so on for people who work around the global business of medical communications, medical education, medical publishing, and the associated businesses. Also, a sort of shout out for those of you looking to get into the business, maybe as a medical writer, account manager or whatever. You'll find lots of resources over at firstmedcommsjob.com, which hopefully will help give you insights into our business. We do a lot of webinars and generating video content and so on. You'll find more than 500 videos now over at NetworkPharma TV about all sorts of topics around and about the MedComms business. So go and have a look. I'm going to just say a big thank you to the panel for joining me. We're going to be talking about events today. To be honest, what I'm hoping, we've got 4 experienced events professionals with us, and I'm hoping we're going to get some stories here, guys. Okay, so the idea was sort of practicalities, pitfalls, running events. I'm very aware that I'm running a Zoom event and I'm faced with 4 experts in the area, so it's slightly whatever the word is. But I'm hoping we're going to have an interesting discussion, and we're going to hear some stories and lots of practical tips for people that they can use in their own activities. We're going to cover all sorts of events, hopefully, and I'm going to start by just asking them to introduce themselves. So, Gavin, tell us who you are and give us a sense of where you're coming at things from.
Hi there. Thanks very much for hosting this session today, Peter. So I'm Gavin Clark. I'm from Remote Solutions. We're a production company, and our kind of main focus is virtual events, broadcasts, and virtual events and face-to-face meetings there. We've been established since 2004, so we've got lots of experience in all different types of events, and certainly over the last couple of years we've seen obviously the big influx in virtual events, and now we're seeing how we mix those all together with the world of face-to-face and how we bring those remote attendees and presenters into it. So that's kind of more my background in helping companies put on amazing events.
Excellent. Thanks, Gavin. And we'll come back to some of those points. I mean, the events business is fascinating at the moment, the way we're all trying to figure out whether it's virtual or hybrid or face-to-face and all the rest of it. And I think there's an interesting discussion simply in there. Dermott, I think you're next. Yes, alphabetically, Dermott, you're on next.
I think so. Who you are. Just about. Cheers, Peter. So I'm Dermott. I lead the sales and customer success teams here at Vevox. And for those that don't know, we are the #1 user-rated Q&A and polling platform. And I've been in audience engagement since about 2004 as well. And I started out as an on-site technician, managing the keypad technology as it was back then at lots of events and meetings, and was lucky enough to work with the likes of SWM, Alistair and Ritika here, and had a great time traveling the world with those guys, running lots of investigator meetings and things like that. And I guess now the technology's moved on so much. Actually, we primarily support people in using the technology themselves. So organisers and presenters can have really engaging meetings using polling and Q&A platforms like Vevox.
Excellent, excellent, Dermott. And to state the obvious, particularly online, there's a challenge in that, isn't there? Are people actually just sleeping, or are they really engaged? It's less easy than being in a room with them and seeing them, sort of thing. So there's an interesting discussion in there. So thanks for coming in from your point of view. I'm thinking alphabetically at the moment. I'm struggling. Alistair, you're next. Go on. Tell us who you are.
Thanks so much, Peter. And thanks for having me on the panel as well. Excited for today's session. Yeah, so my name's Alistair Marston. I work for a company called SWM Partners, and SWM is a MedComms and event planner for all pharmaceutical clients. And my role within SWM is Digital Program Director. So it's looking after digital services, virtual events, and when they do come about, helping with the hybrid side of things as well. So happy to be here and excited to discuss what we're discussing today.
Okay, and to be clear on this, Alistair, you're very much involved in the virtual eventing side of the business.
If we're picking teams, then yes, I sit on the virtual
if you're gonna,
side.
Okay, yeah, okay. Well, that's not unreasonable to pick some teams at this stage. Okay, Ritika, you're on the content development side, really, aren't you? Tell us about yourself.
I am, yes. Thanks, Peter. Thanks for hosting. So I'm Scientific Program Director at SWM. I've been here for about 5 years. And I'm also a pharmacist by background. So I've worked in healthcare and pharmaceuticals for around 10 years now. So my role at SWM is to work very closely with our pharmaceutical clients, healthcare clients, biotech companies, and help them to develop their content and sort of adapt it to more engaging formats. We also write a lot of medical educational materials. I also run and execute the events, be it on site or virtually. So I work closely with Alistair on the virtual front, and also just sort of deliver the whole project from start to finish.
Excellent. Okay, right, guys, thank you very much. That's who you are. We've got a good audience again, as always, and it's an international audience again, as always. So please, guys, if you're watching this, just join in. You've got your text boxes, so share your own observations and stories and questions. We'll feed that into the discussion. But this is basically just an open discussion now, a little bit freewheeling, and we're winging it a little bit, aren't we, guys? So we'll see where we go with this one. Let's just start with the obvious point, and maybe we'll get a viewpoint from each of you on this. I'm going to bounce around a little bit randomly to try and make sure that you guys stay awake as well. So who wants to kick off? I'm going to start with you, Gavin, for what it's worth. On that point, you know, that we mentioned, that the events business is a whole mixed picture out there at the moment, isn't it? You know, and you've seen it developing over years. You've seen the last couple of years. You're involved in different sorts of events. Just give us your sense of where the heck we are at the moment, because there's some strong opinions out there as to whether we should all go back to face-to-face, or whether we should abandon face-to-face, or there's this lovely word hybrid, which I struggle to understand what people are meaning most of the time. Just give us a sense of what you think is going on out there, because eventing ain't dead, is it? But it's different. Yeah, talk to us a little bit about your view on that.
Yeah, well, you know, I think that we're all humans at the end of the day. And I think whenever we look at events, really, we want that opportunity to meet each other and really face-to-face, I think, will never die. Whatever technology we have out there, when we look at what the future's happening, you know, what's happening with technology and the way it's advancing. So we still need that need to meet face-to-face. But what I actually think that people are struggling with is kind of really defining their audience and defining what type of meeting that they want. For me, is it an educational type meeting? Do you really need to meet face-to-face to educate people? And that's where, you know, maybe a virtual type solution would be really beneficial, because you can have multiple events, give people the choice of which one to join, and you can kind of expand your audience that way. And then when we look at networking events, sadly, it doesn't matter what technology and what tools we have out there, it's really hard for us to network using these online platforms. And I know that there's lots of tools out there that say they do it really well, and a lot of them do it really well. But we can't beat that moment that we have over a coffee, in the breaks, or when we're sitting next to somebody in the audience, just to have that informal chat. It's hard to kind of get those discussions started. So really, I think that people need to kind of take a step back, decide what type of meeting they're looking at holding, whether it is more focused on networking or whether it's virtual, and then going forward with that. And there's also lots of other kind of factors in there, like environmental is really important now to people. If we can limit our carbon footprint, then obviously limiting the amount of people that go to these events and using virtual is a great way to do that. So we've got lots of things to balance there. And I think it's kind of the role of the event planners, working with the clients, working with people like us, the technical producers, just to help define the audience, define that message, and define that output of the meeting to help really kind of tailor that event and what's going to be most suitable, depending on the demographics of the people, where they're coming from, and obviously budget has a huge factor in this as well. We've seen a lot of corporates now over the last couple of years slash their budgets for travel, and it's difficult to get back when you've kind of slashed it. So they've got to look at ways to be more productive in their budgets and how they make that work.
Okay, so I'm going to pin you down, right? Because my question that I was trying to get at was what's happening at the moment. Forget the arguments for and against what's there. Just give us a sense of out there in the marketplace. Is everyone rushing back to face-to-face? You know, just give us a sense of what the market dynamics are at the moment.
Okay, so what we have seen a drop in virtual events that we are getting involved in, because I think ultimately people are a little bit tired of virtual events and the way that they're run. We are seeing a lot more face-to-face coming back now, and we're super busy with face-to-face, but we're also seeing people holding back booking these face-to-face events just because they're not getting the uptake, or they're scared of committing to that spend of that event and then not getting the footprint that they want at the event. And, you know, 200-person meeting, say, and we only get 50% attendance, and they're paid for the rooms and bank food and beverages and that, they're kind of holding back. So we're kind of seeing lots of last-minute type requests coming in now. We're seeing the virtual events dropping off. We are seeing face-to-face events increase, but I don't think it's been quite as rapid as what we expected. In fact, in the return of face-to-face events.
Okay. And that's probably, I would argue that that's for very solid practical reasons. As an organizer, it's very, very nerve-wracking, because people are leaving it so late to make up their minds, and everyone in the chain is having a problem. The venues are getting frustrated because we're not booking it or whatever. You know, as an organizer, you're very frustrated because people tell you, but there is this sort of fear that, you know, 30-40% of people are not going to the face-to-face meetings, even in these sort of, and with these hybrid events and things. 40% don't turn up. Well, that affects the economics. I think there's a lot in there to unpick. And the truth is, a lot of people don't like giving very open answers to those sorts of questions, because it affects the money side of it. Let's move on quick. Alistair, I'm going to drag you in. You know, you're on the virtual side. I ran a meeting last week, for what it's worth. It could not have been done online, as far as I'm concerned. It was a group of people who hadn't really known each other before. I was trying to get this topic talked about and whatever. I insisted that it should be on in person. The people who immediately were coming back to me going, "Oh, it looks interesting, but please, can we join online? Or will you record it, Peter, so I can look at it in my own time?" And I went, no, this meeting needs to be in person. And I was absolutely vindicated. There's no two ways about it. It doesn't matter what it was. But it wasn't just the liveliness of the conversation. It was all that serendipitous stuff. It was talking to each other on the way in, talking over coffees. It was all the other stuff that went on. So just fight your corner a little bit, because you know, that's where it's a problem online, isn't it?
Sure, and I totally see the side of this, Peter, and I very much sit in Gavin's camp. What he was saying there about you know, events they can happen and they function in both formats, but I think what needs to happen is it needs to be purpose-led. So instead of saying, I am definitely having this event virtually, it's about taking a step back and evaluating what impression and what thoughts you want to leave people with from attending that event. And if the main purpose is kind of networking, which it sounds like your event was, to kind of meet and mingle, then there's, again, I agree with Gavin, there's no kind of way to do that online. Online more sort of lends itself to content, training, that more kind of educational value. So whilst I sit in the virtual camp, I'll happily admit that face-to-face still has its part to play. To kind of build on what you're saying to Gavin about what's going on in the world of events at the moment, I would say for me, I'm seeing like a massive shift in more of kind of the content and the program and what's going on at those events. When everything was reopened after pandemic, etc., and we could go back to face-to-face, I think some people reverted to putting on the same kind of events that they did before COVID, when everything was face-to-face and we didn't have this surge in online events. And now everyone's realizing that that agenda and that program is not enough alone to drag people out of their homes, their comfort of working from home and joining things online. It's a lot harder to get people to events, and those same sort of content, the same speakers as before is not quite attracting the audience. So it's about making that shift, being purpose-led, and making sure that you're gathering people for the right reasons in the right environment is what I would say.
I'm just going to pursue that. I'm going to put a pin on a particular point you just made about the networking. I think networking is hugely important, okay, and it was partly what I was doing last week, but it was more than that. What I was trying to do was generate some excitement around some topics and get some ideas generated and brainstorming and stuff. If I'd had that online, they would have sat and looked at each other largely, okay? But shoving them in a room and being provocative and all the rest of it generated conversation at a whole different level. The networking was important, I'm agreeing, and it was all part of it, but actually there were just more ideas and more different sorts of comments being flown around. And I don't think we should make it as simple as I see other people talking, in terms of, you know, if networking, going face to face, you know, to gain some information or be educated, go online sort of thing. There's another aspect in there which is about people being creative when they get in a room together in a whole different way. At least that's my opinion. Okay, Dermott, go on. Just, you're about getting people engaged and so on. So talk a little bit about your sense of what things are happening, and on that point about the pros and cons of them being different environments.
Yeah, happily. Just to pick up on your point about getting people in the room, I attended an event a few weeks ago, and it was the first in-person event I'd attended in a very long time. And they've done lots of virtual stuff, and lots of them were very good, particularly when they were content driven, like Alistair made the point of there. But it seemed like people were more focused, and I think that's something that you lose a little bit in virtual sessions. Is everybody was there, they were all paying attention, they were writing notes, they were bouncing things off the people sitting next to them, but they were all there in that content at that time. And there's no doubt that you lose that when it comes to virtual, because there's all those distractions that people have got in front of them when they're sitting behind their computer. I'm sure our audience today are all completely focused on this session, but you've got emails, you've got Teams, everything's lighting up and pinging all the time. And the biggest thing for me with that is, you know, aside from the networking, when it's great to meet people, it's that focus on that topic, and that drives the creativity that kind of you're talking about there. And you know, we're seeing people still do a lot of different types of meetings. It feels like there's more people going back to the face-to-face side of things, but there's no doubt everybody's kind of the pressures on timings have shifted. People want to be able to do all of those things that they have been doing over the last couple of years, and don't want to commit to taking that whole day out or that whole 2 days out. And that's why we're still seeing so many people doing the going down the virtual route, I think.
I tell the story. It gets a bit cliche. You know, my wife's got a list of things I have to do, sort of thing. You know, I can't do that when I've traveled like I used to travel, sort of thing. There's dogs to walk, there's whatever. I can fit stuff around the virtual meeting. It becomes much more a sort of, do I really want to go to that meeting? Which you know comes in a lot of the points you've already made. And Alistair was talking about the content and so on. But there's again, it's more than that, isn't there? There's practicalities of your life now, which has suddenly become a lot more important. And I'm being very picky about what I go to. Ritika, I mean, where do you sit? Do you rush to go to meetings? Are you much more picky? Talk around that aspect of it. Just frankly, as an individual, just going, there's a lot of things to do. Where do you sit on where the balance lies between going face to face, maybe traveling to a meeting, versus jumping online?
I think I'm coming at it from more of a medical aspect or a healthcare professional angle, because if you think about it, a lot of the professionals who our medical events are targeted at are based in, you know, hospitals or clinics, etc. And they're by themselves. They're going through their day-to-day work, you know, seeing their patients, but not often do they get the opportunity to collaborate and meet fellow, you know, doctors or physicians, etc., healthcare professionals in person to discuss various topics, or to learn about a new procedure or process, to share their practice tips, etc. So my angle is very much that there is a lot of value in the face-to-face. It just depends on the event itself, if it's a good mix of opportunities for interactivity, for collaboration, but also like a robust learning experience. If an event encompasses all of those aspects, for me personally, I would be more inclined to attend and lean that way. But on the flip side, I totally do see the value of virtual as well, because again, busy healthcare professionals, they can't be everywhere, and they have to sort of pick and choose what they attend. But nonetheless, being somewhere virtually and learning about something or sharing their experiences with a team online, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, and there's still value in it. It's just, I think now there's other sort of burdens on the team and the attendees that come to our events, so they have to weigh it up, perhaps more so than before.
And it's and again, there's different dimensions to this. It's not just as an individual, you've got other things going on, but increasingly, I guess, you know, it's easy for the budget holders to say, no, you know, you can do it. If you can do it online, we're not paying for you to jump on a plane and go somewhere, sort of thing. And again, those sorts of factors, I mean, different factors for different people, but they're all playing a part if you're trying to put on a face-to-face meeting, certainly. I want to jump around a little bit. I'm looking at the audience and the questions that are coming in. I'd encourage everybody to join in with their questions and comments. I'm just going to keep jumping around a bit, guys, okay? But push back or whatever if you want to go in a slightly different direction. And I'm being a bit simplistic about this, okay? Let's take face-to-face meetings, all right? I'm also trying to get some of you to tell us some of your stories, okay, guys? What works, what doesn't work, all right? Let's just talk about face-to-face for a minute and your experience of those before and now, as it were. one of the big problems face-to-face is simply accessibility and inclusivity, as it were. You know, and that's a very broad point. So it's about whether people all around the world, in all sorts of countries, all sorts of income levels and whatever else, can get to your meeting. It's about individuals who may have visible disabilities, whatever. It's about patient involvement and so on, getting involved in the meeting. Now, I very clearly remember everyone getting excited a couple of years ago and saying it's all changing, it's all going to be virtual, and it's going to be marvelous because so many people can get involved in meetings who weren't before. And my feeling, but that's the discussion, is that we're going backwards from that point of view. As we push to go back to face, we're forgetting that desire to have everyone involved. And it's become, are people remembering the benefits of all those people being able to get involved? And there was a bunch of different types of people in there. So we could take those different people differently. But let's take patients as a good example. And it's an obvious example. It was great. We can have the patient voice in the room. But now we're going back to face, and unfortunately, it's the same old problem, guys. You know, we can't get you up the steps and round the corner and over, etc. So, okay, that's my view, and I'm worried we're going backwards. So, who's got a view on that from their long experience? Gavin, it looked like you're going to jump in there, so I'm going to just put you on the spot and say go with that one for a minute.
Yeah, no, I think you raise a really good point. Actually, you know, having all these tools out there does make these events a lot more accessible. But even with a face-to-face event, these tools aren't going away. And actually using the right tools, the technology, we can still make it very accessible. And something you mentioned earlier about hybrid events, I'm kind of in your camp with. I don't really believe in the word hybrid, but we can have any meeting, anything that we do live face-to-face, we can broadcast that very simply and very easily now. And there's some really great tools out there that can actually do it very cost effectively as well. Of course, you can have a full production with your virtual audience, but actually there's some really great tools out there that you can utilize to make it accessible, like how we're using things like AI for the closed captioning now. We still have the ability to, even if we use a sort of basic camera setup and feed the audio in a single static camera, we can still make the event online for those people that are unable to attend through disabilities or not be able to work there. Plus, we can use tools for people in the room to make sure that that they can hear the meeting, see the content, and still have some involvement there. So I think part of maybe why we're going backwards a little bit, again, I think it sometimes comes down to budget. People are stripping things back when they're going back to virtual event. They want to reduce costs because they're worried about overspending or people not attending. So they're actually cutting down on some of the services or some of the spend that they would have ordinarily kind of catered for then. And I think that might be impacting some people's decisions in how they make these events accessible, which is a real shame. It doesn't have to be expensive, and there's some great tools out there to make it very inclusive for all of the attendees.
Sometimes it does just require a voice around the table that represents that group of people, should we put it like that, sort of thing, to remind people. Let's try and get a couple of war stories out of you. Come on, guys. And let's stick with face-to-face at the moment. Some obvious stuff. I mean, let's talk about some of the obvious stuff. I went to a meeting, it's a while ago now, but I went to a meeting. The guys were trying to show us an online activity. We were all supposed to sit there and download something on after. There wasn't any Wi-Fi connectivity in this great big meeting room underneath the floor of the hotel, sort of thing. I mean, it seems obvious, but we've all been caught out with those sorts of things, the technology or whatever. Just give us a few. Is anyone going to be sharing a couple of stories? Just give us a couple of stories about things that went wrong and maybe a little bit of pre-thought would have solved that. I'm putting you on the spot.
I'll give you a terrible war story here, not to scare people off too much, but back when we were doing event app stuff, and so big, heavy, content laden event apps, which meant that actually everybody required a really, really heavy amount of bandwidth to be able to use it. I think things have changed somewhat now, and the providers have wised up a little bit. But yeah, the organisers expected people to download and look at loads of rich content on their devices. They'd given out iPads to everybody. And what they hadn't thought about too much was all the other events going on in the venue at the time. So actually the Wi-Fi was under even more strain. And then they were actually trying to kind of remotely broadcast the session, and they had somebody walking around with a wireless broadcast camera, which then completely killed any devices nearby in terms of the network that they were picking up. So there was great intentions to make this a really accessible, but they ended up scuppering themselves by trying to overplay the technology a little bit. Basically, in the end, not many people could actually use the technology in the room, although everybody could see it online okay.
And we can all relate to that, can't we? Has anyone else got a couple of little stories they can throw into the pot on that one? Go on, Alistair. It looks like you're going to say something.
Yeah, I was going to say from a virtual perspective, I guess the benefit for me of virtuals, especially when we run them with all speakers from different locations and not in one room, is that we have multiple environments to control and to rely on. So a recent horror story for me was a speaker sort of messaging me 2 hours before the event that her power's out, so she's got no internet, she's got no battery left on her computer that she's planning to use. So the moral of the story for me is to always have a backup plan. So we were prepared with a recording that she'd done before in a rehearsal, so that was set and ready to use. Unfortunately, she the internet was up and running, the power was back on, ready for her session. But there's so many elements for face-to-face events and virtual events of things that could go wrong or things that could break, and it all obviously comes together to make the event what it is. And it's always good to think on your feet and have something as a backup plan. Before, when I used to do logistics as well, power outages, it's quite a common one. In America, I had a hotel completely without power for a couple of hours before our event. So it's just about being agile, thinking on your feet, having a backup plan, and doing what you can do in that moment, because those things ultimately you can't control, but you can control your reaction and how you deal with them.
I mean, again, I know we can go on and we won't go on, but these things can crop up unexpectedly. It's a question of thinking about it beforehand. And I know people going back in years, certainly when it was a face-to-face environment, I guess, but they had their suitcase that was that was the suitcase they took to every meeting because it contained all the bits and pieces they'd ever been asked for on site, like blue tack and stuff like that. I'm just trying to find, is it Gillian was saying, I quite like these sorts of comments, and again, we're talking about the face-to-face, I suppose, more the practicalities, take comfortable shoes with you, remember snacks, painkillers and blister packs and things like that. If you do these things a few times, you start to build up your own little suitcase, don't you? But the internet, someone's saying they've got a battery backup sort of thing. It's things like that. But it's remarkable how we've sort of forgotten some of that stuff. And again, and the whole just-in-time thing. Ritika, just out of interest, I remember the days, because I'm that old, when you had to have your slides 2 weeks in advance, if not more, to be able to make the damn things up. And it's got to the stage now where we all turn up at a meeting 30 seconds beforehand and then hand over the file because we've just changed it. And you go, crikey, guys, this is all just pushing the envelope a little bit too much. But on the content side, that must be happening all the time for you, isn't it, Ritika?
It is. I do feel like that my speakers send me content or slides. The time frame is getting smaller and smaller. So like you said, literally 30 seconds to a minute before someone was due to go on stage, that's when I was handed the slide deck with their presentation on, and it's quite nerve-wracking because sometimes it's fine, and the speaker is a great speaker and they own it and they know their content inside out, and it doesn't really matter exactly what their content looks like. It may not be the correct format, etc., but they sort of own it and they discuss what they need to discuss and the message comes across clearly. But also I've had a lot of experiences where the presentation itself is so data heavy, text heavy, speakers perhaps quite unprepared or don't know the content inside out, and they really struggle, and they struggle to get through the topic on time as per program, but also they struggle to engage the audience. You can see people's attention just fleeting, so it really does depend on what they've got there. But like you say, just going back to it, I feel that the more prepared speakers are, and the more time we've had to transform their content and adapt it and sort of put in some, for example, diagrams, graphic animations, video sequences to convey their messages better, more clearly, and more engagingly. That's happening sort of less and less because of this last minute sort of nature, but it's not something we encourage. Of course, it's something that I'm working on daily to try and get my speakers to be as organized as possible and us to be as well planned and well rehearsed as possible. So I still try and fit in a bit of a technical rehearsal or technical check on site as much as we can, even if it's just a few minutes.
But yeah, and it just again, all this stuff intrigues me, practically speaking. I mean, the speaker that turns up with his slides, her slides 30 seconds beforehand, having just made the changes. We're in a business where we worry about whether there's any typos in the slide or stuff like that. Yeah, errors don't creep in, they drop in when we're all doing things so last minute. And if we're responsible for a meeting that's just supposed to look perfect, then you can't squeeze the time of the people that have to check these things. And people don't take that into account as much as I think they should. I guess I'm just going to talk to the converted here. But as I say, Ritika, that's right in your area, isn't it? You've got to take a little bit of time to look at this and see whether there's a typo in it, sort of thing.
Oh, absolutely. And the format, you have to check that tables or graphs aren't falling off the slide, etc. Just check that animations flow in the correct order. There's quite a lot to it. And like you say, I don't think speakers all realise that. It's all very last minute and their schedules are tight. And I do understand that as well. But just giving
like all of us, they've been doing this on their laptop and they know what that slide is supposed to say. So their brain is going, well, I typed that correctly. I mean, this is obvious stuff in some ways, but my goodness, it gets thrown into sharp relief at some of these events and this last minute stuff. And Gavin, just to bring you in, I mean, I again, something that I think is funny is the wrong word, but people turning up at meetings online or face-to-face. I'm sort of moving to the online side, but still face-to-face really. Slides, it's, give us a PowerPoint presentation and everyone goes, oh, that's fine, I can give you a PowerPoint presentation. And then you presumably sit there and get, 6 speakers with 6 completely different sorts of PowerPoint presentations or clever little, because someone's going to be clever. And I like this particular program. It's really cool. And they turn up and they go, so use it. That's just, again, a big minefield of problematical type areas if you're trying to pull together a show that's slick. Again, I'm sort of asking for a war story or two here.
No, absolutely. And we see that all the time. And now, because we've got Google Docs now and we've got Keynote and we've got PowerPoint. Back in the day, it was all PowerPoint. It was all kind of relatively straightforward. But we do see it a lot with these last minute presentations. And to be honest with you, the amount of times I've had the presenter kind of call me out at the tech desk to say that I've loaded the wrong slides. But I've only got one slide deck to load, so I can only load that just because they have been last minute, they haven't done their own version control, or they just haven't saved their updates, and they kind of look at the tech team and blame the tech team for that. So, that's a kind of frequent war story, and and we're fine with taking the blame because we want the presenter to look good. But just to echo some of the comments that were said from Ritika earlier, a lot of the time it's down to the presenter as well. A good presentation and the content, the content should be reinforcing what's being said by the presenter. But so many times now we see presenters that haven't particularly had a lot of training, they're not very confident, so they really are relying on the slides. So that's made them really nervous. So they are checking it, minutes before, making the changes minutes before, and then that can lead to error. I've had it a number of times where we've got the slide decks at the last minute and people have left timings on. They've used it as part of a kiosk or something, and they're wondering why their slides are just advancing randomly again. And unfortunately, when you give us a slide deck 30 seconds before you're due on the screen, we just simply haven't got time to check all the different things. Like we're saying, all the animations are working. Is everything fitting on the screen? There's a Google Docs have suddenly given to us. So what that means that we have to be a lot more prepared, which is fine. We can do that. But having all these different sources of all this content, it means we need extra laptops, we need extra vision mixers, and that costs money to the client. So, it's all these things that, you can strip it back and make things kind of simplistic, but then you kind of take away some of the options that are available for your presenters there. So we're all used to now getting content right at the last minute, but if you want to make sure that it's displayed as you want, you've got to spend a bit of time up front with the tech team, checking over the slides, do the tech check, whether it be face-to-face or virtual, have a look at your slides on the screen and spend some time there. And then ultimately, I tell presenters to then relax, give us your content, then forget about your content almost, then relax, enjoy the meeting until your time is due to present, and then you're going to have a great session. So, last minute changes are kind of something that we're getting very familiar with, and that's kind of the kind of double-edged sword with virtual events. It means that we do have the ability to switch things around very quickly. When we've got a full rig in a face-to-face room, it can be difficult to bring in the extra kit needed. But with a virtual event, we do have that flexibility. But then a lot of people rely on us without kind of giving us any heads up, just to magically pursue with that flexibility there.
It's really hard.
And that leads us in. Oh, go on, Dermott.
I was going to say, because it's a high stress environment for those presenters, and the last thing that they want to do is look silly. And they've obviously got comfortable with their deck. But then the other side of that is the credibility for the organisers and the people putting on the event. And there's huge judgment when there's a typo on the slide or PowerPoint present then doesn't work. And the easy people to shout at are the guys and girls in the polo shirts at the back. But yeah, it's a real challenge for people, and you want your presenters to feel really comfortable, and you don't want to make them look silly. But at the same time, us in this environment have got that responsibility to the customer, to the client, to make sure it all looks good.
Yeah. And it's that sort of that speaker that turns up and says, "But it looks fine on my computer. Just plug my computer in." It's not necessarily as simple as that. But leading into the online side of things, we make the problems even worse, don't we? Because everyone can jump online now. I find this. I mean, 4 years ago, when I started doing Zoom meetings, and I couldn't persuade people to come online and do a Zoom meeting in the first place, sort of thing. But you'd have, if you could, then you had quite a degree of concentration on the fact that we've not done this before. We'll have a go at it, sort of thing. Nowadays, I mean, the number of people who tell me I don't, fine, Peter, I'll be fine. I'll be there on the day. It'll be fine. Don't worry about it. And if I can be rude, the more senior they are, the more likely there is going to be a problem, sort of thing. Everyone's talking. I mean, there's a lot of comments about tech checks and things, and even for my simple little Zoom meeting, we got together a few days ago just so that we could or from my point of view, just make sure that I was dealing with people that could actually get online and so on. And it's remarkable how many little problems crop up along the way there, and again, how last minute all is. So, and some of the size of PowerPoint presentations is ginormous, and you go, we're on the home internet connection there, sort of thing, practical problems like that, it just scares me a little bit. Am I just going to get nods there? I think I'm just going to get nods there.
I can agree with you more, Peter. What we're seeing now is when we first, everybody was heavily into virtual a couple of years ago. Now people are more comfortable with the tools. It's kind of like they're even more so. I haven't got time to do the tech check now. And you kind of think it's 10 minutes out of your time. Why not do it? Because we're trying to make you look great. We want you to sound great. We want your background to be great, the lighting to be great. And actually just spending 10 minutes with one of our technicians, just ticking that box means that you're going to have a great experience, and your attendees are going to be super engaged because they're going to have a great experience by seeing your content really well and seeing you really well.
Because and again, how often does it happen that it didn't work, and it's not the speaker's fault, it's the technology. So obviously your computer doesn't work properly, does it? Sorry, I cut across you, Alistair. Go on.
No, I was just going to say, I was just chiming in on Gavin. I've never had, so we're of the same boat. It's not an optional thing for speakers that are talking to us virtually. They sort of have to come either to the group session or one-to-one basis. And I've never had a speaker turn around at the end of that session and go, well, this was a waste of my time. It's always been like, I'm really glad I did actually make the time for this, because I didn't know that your setup would do X, Y, Z. I didn't know that this would look like it does, or however. So it's always kind of valuable. Just building on what Gavin says, always worth spending the time, because for me, an event, virtual or face-to-face, works best when everyone feels comfortable. You've got to make your attendees feel comfortable, and you've got to make your speakers feel comfortable, and then everyone else feels comfortable while the event is happening, and it should be a lot more smooth, a lot more natural.
Okay. Let's go in a slightly different direction. Dermott, I'm going to bring you in. Engagement, games, quizzes, polls, all those sorts of things sound great. Comments?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a comments come in from somebody a little while ago, actually talking about the focus on the face-to-face, but also do we have any data on whether people are really engaged in virtual meetings and those distractions? And I think that's a really important question. Face-to-face, you can see people, you can look in their eyes, if they're paying attention to you, they'll nod along, you kind of get that reassurance as a presenter. You definitely don't get so much of that in the virtual or in your favorite format, the hybrid environment. And that's just because, people aren't necessarily using the tools that are available. And that's where we see bringing in things, like quizzes, a great way to do it. You've mentioned them, because you're asking everybody to do something. So you're reassuring, yourself as the organizer, but also the presenter, that people are listening. If you're asking, people to respond to a poll, you're seeing the numbers of people that are voting coming in. That makes me go, great, I've got at least 50 people are actually listening to me, and they're paying attention. And the same goes for, Q&A as well. We've got some great comments and questions coming in here. So we actually know people are being engaged, and there's loads of different tools that you can use there. I think to give people a bit of a tip on that might be useful. We talk about when you're starting your conference or event, what are the best ways to get people moving on that engagement. And you look at icebreakers, and it's always been great fun. And I think we were talking about this the other day, and Gavin made a good point that people do silly things as part of icebreakers. And icebreakers are really, really important for so many reasons. They, probably the first and foremost one is they actually get everybody onto the technology, and it's a very practical way of making sure people know what they're doing. But again, it's giving you as the organizer or the presenter that reassurance that it's all working and people are getting involved in it. One of my pet hates was always a really silly opener. What did you have for breakfast this morning, or something like that? It's pointless, and it actually sets a bad tone. It kind of doesn't reinforce the value of using that technology, and the type of things you want people to engage with you with. Our go-to in all our town hall meetings, and we do those in a hybrid environment now, is we ask people how they're feeling, and we build it as a word cloud so everybody can see the words coming in, and they and the most popular ones grow. But that makes sure everybody's online. I can see how many people are responding, but it also gives me as a presenter that sense of the mood of the audience, where they're at, and I can kind of react accordingly, and chivvy people up a little bit if there's a few tired's coming in and things like that. So it's really important to kind of space that out throughout your session as well. Don't just do it up front or wait till the end to do your little quiz. Keep it going throughout all of your sessions, and it kind of brings people back in terms of that attention curve to make sure they're paying attention. But I like it for the reassurance as a presenter.
I'm going to throw 2 quick points in from on the online side. Just a point that it drives me nuts. People record these things. We're recording this today. I watch a recording of someone's webinar or something, and they go, "Now we're going to have a poll or a quiz or something," and you might see the questions come up if you've got it on a slide, and then you can hear them talking about it, and the results are coming in, and as a viewer to a recording, most of the time you don't see the results, you don't know what the hell's going on. So I just think that is, again, a really stupid thing to do. If one of the things you are doing, which is a very sensible thing as far as I'm concerned, is capturing the meeting, particularly online, and you go and people can come and look at this afterwards, don't make it so they can't actually engage in the whole damn thing. It just is stupid. But I will also die on the hill, and I know this is easy for me to say because the sorts of meetings I run, I can run it like this, and not all meetings can be run like this, but I will die on the hill of cabaret style meetings, seating arrangements. So as people are sitting down, they're looking at each other and they're forced to talk to each other. The theatre style meeting, I just think, is so awful from a point of view of trying to get people to talk to each other, because you sit down, you look forward, and you don't look left or right. Cabaret forces it every time. So that's I'll die on that hill. Ritika, just out of interest, let's try, we're going to run out of time, aren't we? I want to keep on going, guys. Ritika, let's bring you in. We talked about, I'm trying to follow on a bit of a logic here. Quizzes, polls, things like that, generating content. How do you do it? People are asking about AI, inevitably, okay, at the moment, it's AI. Can you use AI to have a bit of fun and generate quizzes and games? Is that a useful use of AI? Talk us a little bit about generating that sort of content.
Well, I see quite a lot of value in doing sort of case studies or real life patient scenarios and that kind of thing, because these are medical meetings for the most part. So they relate to patients further down the line. They're the sort of end people who are going to benefit from whatever therapy or medical device it is, or medication, etc. So wherever possible, I try and weave in interactivity in that form. So like Dermott said, so polls, patient case studies, sort of knowledge checks throughout. I think there's so much room for it. We create sort of a model patient, and we'll sort of ask questions about, is this patient eligible for this, this, and this? And it's a really good way of engaging everybody. So not just in the room, but virtually too. And you can see also that people are voting and people are participating, and people do free type their thoughts about a particular process or an opinion, so to speak. So absolutely, I think it's really vital to weave that in throughout the event.
Okay, quick answer, yes or no. Have you, hang on, quick answer,
Sorry.
quick question, sorry. Can you use AI to generate that sort of content? Quick, yes or no?
I believe
or
so.
You believe so? Okay, we'll take that. Go on, Dermott, finish. Go on, finish.
No, I was just going to reinforce the point there. You know, by asking people those questions, and the guys at SWM do some great patient case studies and things like that. It's brilliant for the learning outcomes. You know, you can go away as an organizer from that event and go, wow, look, we've moved people. They knew this much before, they now know this much now, and that could be one of your outcomes for success. And you know, really great way to measure, particularly in a series environment. You can go along and you can actually go back and reinforce anything that you've seen that people haven't necessarily picked up on.
Right. Okay. Go on, Gavin. Go on.
And I was just going to kind of combine with AI and stuff, and how with the future and what we're seeing in the future coming up with virtual reality and augmented reality, how you combine some of those, some of that content that's created using the headsets, combine that with AI, and you can actually make a really immersive experience there, which can be particularly powerful, especially in the MedComms world, in the training, you know, to be able to have some silhouette of a body there, and doctors and nurses, etc., be able to kind of, you know, really dive in there is going to be really, really powerful. And that's kind of really exciting with what, in my view, what's coming up with AI and virtual reality, etc.
Okay, guys, we could turn this into 6 webinars. I'm enjoying myself. I'm going to throw one question at you to try and wrap up. We touched on, I've already admitted I hate the word hybrid. Who's going to give me some sort of an explanation as to what hybrid meeting is? Genuinely, how do you make a hybrid meeting work? Who wants to take that one? Alistair, go on. You're biting at the... Oh, all right, Kevin. I want Alistair to go first.
I don't know if I'm going to answer the question, but I think the most successful strategy for hybrid, you can still use that H word and call the event a hybrid, but you have to treat your online audience separately to your in-person audience, and make sure, like for streaming the whole event and just putting that on, you know, an embedded web player for online people to watch, that's not really a hybrid. That's more of a live stream for me. A hybrid is where everyone's equally engaged and equally involved. So something I always say is the best practice is to provide both audiences a shared space to collaborate. So something like Vevox, Q&A boards, polls, make sure that they've got access to the same thing so that they can network across those platforms and feel properly involved in the event from a virtual perspective. But also the in-person audience understand that there is an online audience as well. So putting up some of the people the cameras of the people joining online, or, you know, just highlighting at each point to make it feel inclusive, because otherwise you end up with that being divisive, and sort of usually the virtual audience kind of comes second. So that's what I'd say on that, Peter.
Right, let's get some final comments as we get into dying minutes, but I'm just going to stick in. I was on a hybrid meeting a week or two ago, and they completely forgot about the few of us that were sitting there online, supposedly engaged. So that's just my work moan. But Gavin, go on. You were going to say something there. Let's just have a final couple of minutes, and then we'll close the meeting. Go on, Gavin.
So just took the words right out of my mouth. And I think it's very easy to have this kind of capture of hybrid, but also some of the questions you need to kind of ask up front. And people think of hybrid as everything. And when we think about it, there's some of the questions that we kind of ask our clients. When you think of a hybrid, are you actually thinking that you want a remote presenter? So all your audience are in the room, but you actually just want a remote presenter. Do you want your participants just to be able to watch the meeting purely just on a platform to watch? Do you want them engaged? So do you have engagement tools alongside? And then finally, do you want them to participate, excuse me, in the meeting? And when we say participate, we mean actually be able to unmute themselves, turn their cameras on, and actually join that in-room audience as well. So that's how we kind of define those sorts of questions up front. So rather than that catch-all of hybrid, well, actually, what are you thinking about with these online tools that you want to use, and then tailor that solution with what they decide there. But ultimately, absolutely what Alistair says, your audience are different. You've got to tailor your content, your event to those two different audiences.
Okay, Dermott, go on. You next.
Yeah, just very much on the same theme there. We've got all the tech in the world, and actually, you know, the guys and Gavin and Tim can put on these amazing, you know, particularly hybrid events now. But I always think it still takes a really strong and confident host or presenter to make sure that they're getting that blend right, because there's a natural bias to the people that are in front of you if you're presenting in the room. but I've also seen it go the other way, where people are so desperate to make sure that the online audience are involved that they forget about the in-person audience.
Right.
So, you know, that presenter's got to be really well briefed and really confident in all the technology and understanding how it works, and bring all those different threads together.
Okay, we're over time. Ritika, the final word is yours. Have you got a comment on hybrid meetings?
I
Do you
think
enjoy
there's
them?
I do. I think there's a lot of value in them, and I specifically think there's a lot of medical techniques or procedures, etc., that can actually be demonstrated online to an in-person audience. So you could have virtual presenters showing something completely unique in, for example, a hospital setting, and there's so much value there for anyone who's watching virtually, but also those in the room. So I think it works both ways, and absolutely, I think it's here to stay if you use it correctly.
But a bit of planning is necessary, and as I say, have respect for both audiences. Okay, and don't con them. Don't just go, this is a hybrid meeting, and charge them what the on-site people are being charged, and then just do a live stream. Okay, let's stop me moaning. Right, guys. Absolutely brilliant. We could do so much more. People in the audience, please don't rush away, because we've got 10 minutes, or at least actually 5 minutes to keep talking. We'll wrap up. But those of you watching the recording, I'm hoping you're getting some really good food for thought from here. I know I can speak for the panelists and say that you're very happy guys, aren't you, for people to reach out and talk to you. LinkedIn is an easy way of doing it. Obviously, if you want to know more about what I'm doing, you can reach out to me. So a quick wave, guys, say goodbye, and wish you all luck. Take care. Bye.
You're here.